Last week, taggers climbed over broken fencing into the remains of a partially completed ocean-wide plaza in downtown Los Angeles to cover almost 27 floors with graffiti. Now, this story has gone viral online. Everyone seems to be talking about it. And there are some debates about whether graffiti can be considered street art. And I think some graffiti can be considered street art. I'm not so sure about this example though. Now, before we get more into graffiti, we do need to talk about what I think is a far more interesting element of the story, which has to do with a Beijing-based developer starting construction on this high rise, running out of money, and then just deciding to abandon it. And now there is no plan in place in regard to what they're supposed to do with this abandoned building, which is attracting, graffiti, crime, all sorts of things. So here's how the plaza or the building was described back in 2016 when it was first announced. Oceanwide Plaza, the first North American development by prominent international developer Oceanwide Holdings in Beijing, is set to become one of the most significant mixed-use developments in the history of downtown Los Angeles. Located directly adjacent to the Staples Center and LA Live, Oceanwide Plaza will comprise 3 residential and hotel towers, along with a 7-story lifestyle podium anchored by an approximately 166,000 square foot open air galleria, creating a vibrant new shopping, dining, and entertainment destination. Except none of that ended up happening. As I mentioned, the developer ran out of money, didn't have the financing, and then they just abandoned the building. And Cenk, you've seen this all across LA County, and I'm sure this is the case in other parts of the country as well. Abandoned buildings, whether we're talking about a single family home or an apartment, a small apartment building, or a high rise like the one we're talking about right now, if they're abandoned, typically they're going to just become a dilapidated, either a drug den or something that is attracting all sorts of other crimes. Yes, it ends up getting tagged up. It ends up, being something that lowers like property values in a neighborhood if it is in fact in a neighborhood. It's a complete and utter disaster. In this case, we're talking about, again, a high rise, which is even more difficult to deal with after it has been abandoned. And there are no plans in place to demolish it. And no one's gonna buy it, especially because when it comes to commercial real estate, well, we know where commercial real estate is right now following the coronavirus pandemic, where most people ended up working remotely or from home.
Yeah, so look, in my book, Justice is Coming, I argued for democratic capitalism. And what does that mean? That means capitalism checked by democracy, our elected leaders fighting for us. So right now we don't have that. We just have total kleptocracy, bribery, et cetera. Real estate interests are the biggest donors at the local level. The 2 biggest owners are real estate and energy companies, and they buy all of our local politicians. So why do I tell you that in this case? Because normally what you would do if we had a real democracy is you would put some check in place. Hey, if you're gonna build a giant high rise and then leave it abandoned in the middle, and it's not a house, it is gigantic, right?
55 stories, 55.
Yeah, 55-story high rise, and you're just gonna leave it in the middle and let it be a giant drug den, et cetera, and the biggest eyesore anybody's ever seen. No, you have to put aside money in case the project doesn't work out for you to dismantle it. But we never do that. We never ask the companies to do anything. We just go, hey, did the check clear? Okay, their donation is in. Yeah, do anything you like. Ruin the city if you like. Who cares? As long as I've got those donations flowing in. So no, our government isn't going to do anything about this. They're not going to hold the company responsible. The company's just going to say we're out of money. Any company can do this to any city. And by the way, we're not even in economic tough times. When we hit economic tough times, they're gonna just leave these cities an enormous mess, and there isn't gonna be anyone to protect you.
So a little more context, because I think it's super relevant to this story. Several years ago, there was a ballot initiative in Los Angeles County referred to as HHH, and it overwhelmingly passed. The whole point of it was to increase taxes on local residents in order to build affordable housing and housing for homeless people, because homelessness continues to be a huge problem in Los Angeles. And people in LA are good people. They're like, you know what? Sure, we're gonna pay more in taxes, but it's for a good cause, and we want to help the people who are really suffering without a home, who are suffering outside. And I don't know where that money went. I really don't, because we have not built housing for the homeless. We have not built affordable housing. And an argument could be made that the resources that have been raised as a result of those increased taxes could have been utilized to finish construction of this building and offer a place or a home for some of these people struggling out on the streets. But God forbid anyone in local government have the imagination necessary to do that. So instead, a Beijing-based developer abandons a 55-story building in downtown LA. It turns into a disaster. Local lawmakers do absolutely nothing about it. They don't think about, okay, well, what can we do to finish the construction of this? And maybe even make this an LA County property that we use for affordable housing. None of that is happening. No imagination, not a care in the world. And look, I gotta be honest with you guys. This story, everyone else is focusing on the graffiti, which, to be quite frank, I don't like the graffiti. I don't think it looks good. And while I do agree that there are examples of graffiti, serving as real street art with a political message, and I support that, this is not an example of that. But the graffiti is such a small, minor part of the story. In my opinion, the bigger part of the story is the fact that this is yet another example of politicians not only abandoning this building and the responsibilities that I feel that this Beijing-based developer should have to the community, but they're also abandoning their voters and the people who live here in LA County. It's disgusting, and I can't stand these people.
So the people who are worried about the graffiti say that it's vandalism. True, for most of it, maybe all of it, but you could say, hey, some of it is good art as well, right? But you know what's the biggest act of vandalism? Leaving a 55-story building unfinished in the middle of a major city.
Yep.
That act of vandalism dwarfs any graffiti. It's like literally thousands of times worse than any graffiti. But hey, as long as you're a company, you can get away with it. If they caught the guys doing the graffiti, they're going to go to jail, right? Well, it's LA, they might not.
No, they won't.
But if the companies doing this giant vandalism in the middle of our city, jail, they're not even going to pay for it. They're free to go, because all companies are always free to go, because we legalize bribes in this country. And last thing along those lines is, Anna mentioned Triple H. That was one of the ballot measures in California, but we've passed many ballot measures in California and LA, equaling untold billions of dollars.
Yep.
And both when I ran for Congress in 2020 and our reporting team, et cetera, throughout these years has asked, where's the money, Lebowski? And what's amazing is almost no one asks. In these last 4 years, I've seen, I think, one article in local California papers, LA Times, San Francisco Chronicle, et cetera, where a reporter has the temerity to ask, like Governor Newsom or any of the elected officials, where the hell's the money? Where did it go? And when they asked, basically they got an answer, none of your business. No, it's exactly our business. It's where the hell is the money? The homelessness has gotten worse. You've built next to nothing, and then don't tell us, hey, give us more money. Okay, I want to for affordable housing, as long as you show me that you're using it for affordable housing, except there's no evidence of that. I have no idea where that money went. And that's exactly what the problem is with these out of control, totally, unaccountable politicians in California.
Yeah, there's gonna be yet another ballot initiative to increase taxes further for affordable housing. Please vote no. No more taxes. Okay, we're taxed like crazy, and there's so much abuse. I know where the money goes, Cenk. The money goes to pad the pockets of their developer friends who inflate the cost of construction and then maybe complete one building, okay, with inflated costs. They're basically, price gouging the taxpayers in this county. But the other place that the money goes to is these unaccountable nonprofits that have not helped the homeless problem at all. So there are all sorts of like deals being made And it's a small circle of people who are looking to make a lot of money off of the taxes that local residents pay. And in the meantime, the very people paying those taxes are the ones who suffer from the half-finished buildings and the blight that we're seeing all across the county. It's disgusting. I can't stand it.
What makes me the angriest is that they abuse our goodwill, because I want to pay for more affordable housing, and most of Californians want to pay for more affordable housing. I have voted for every measure to increase my own taxes. So they take that goodwill and they go, suckers, and then they direct it toward their donors. And then they wonder why people lost faith in their government. And they wonder why people want to turn to like out of control populists like Donald Trump. Because you took what was meant to be a democracy and you destroyed it with your corruption. And then you yell at the voters like it's their fault. So we've got to gain control of our own governments at the local, state, and federal level. There's only one way to do that. It's to get the money out of politics. Because as long as we allow private financing of elections, we are going to have wholesale corruption for the rest of our lives. And the money that they take from us will largely never go to the things that it was intended for. It'll just go straight into their donor pockets.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.